So here we are in the kitchen making our first cocktails. What do we make? Do we make a classic martini? Do we make a sour, a fizz? I think with cocktails, out of all these things, strength, dilution, temperature, the most fundamental rule number one is balance. And balance can be between sweet and sour, between strong and weak, between sweet and dry, between bitter and sweet. There's so many different complexities that can go into cocktails, but sweet and sour is the easiest one to grasp, down to the basic fact that it's based on ratios. And with sours in cocktails, if you can master this one simple sour ratio, you can make your classic gin fizz, you can make your margarita, you can make a whiskey sour, an amaretto sour, and it really opens up your spectrum for balancing flavors and allows you to get super creative. So there are three main elements that go into a sour. There is the booze, the strong element. In this case, we're using fantastic Renais. There's the acidity, there's citrus. In this case, we're going to be using some lemons. The lemons kind of go into your most classic of all sour recipes. You can also use grapefruit, orange, lime, but that does somewhat change the balance, and we can get onto that. And then, of course, you've got your sweetener, balancing sweet with sour. So in this case, we're going to start off just with plain white sugar. There is a fourth element of sours, but you can take it or leave it, and that's the emulsifier. Some sours, like a daiquiri, are really clean and crisp and just nothing but that booze, that acidity and that sweetness. But then there are some, like a whiskey sour, that have got this nice kind of frothy texture, and that comes into part traditionally from something like egg white. The OG, once you shake it with acidity, it's a form of pasteurization, so it's completely safe to consume, raw as it were. There are also alternatives out there in the kind of modern world. Chickpea brine, it's got quite a neutral flavor, it's a little bit of salinity, but that's called aquafaba, and aquafaba is a really great vegan alternative, and you can even make meringues out of it instead of egg whites. And then the kind of third commercially available option is like a foaming agent. This is from a bitters company. It's made traditionally from a root or a tree bark. You just add a couple of drops into your cocktail and it creates a lovely frothy texture. I think today we're going to use chickpea brine because that is my favorite. So to make a sour, you need to make a syrup. You can make a classic sour just with granulated sugar, but it's much easier to take the pain out of dissolving it a la minute in a cocktail and make a simple syrup. Now, with sugar syrups, they've got a really great shelf life. They can last anywhere between a week to a month in your fridge, depending on how concentrated you make it. And there's two types of syrups you can make. A simple syrup, which is 1 part water and 1 part sugar by weight, or there's a rich simple syrup, which is 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. And we are going to use a simple syrup 1:1 because it's going to really make our balancing of cocktails easy from a ratio perspective. So to make your simple syrup, you've got to start off by getting your kitchen scales. You can do this by eye or by volume, but I would always recommend using scales to really get a nice accurate balance between sugar and water. Take a little pot and make sure you tear that to 0 and add your sugar however much you like, bearing in mind you're going to have an equal amount of water. So in this case, I'm going to add 200 grams of sugar. Plain white sugar, can be caster sugar, but granulated sugar will be absolutely fine. And to that, we're going to add 200 grams of water. Doesn't have to be hot because you're going to be warming up on the stove. Fantastic. Bang on. So we're going to put that onto the hot plate, and we're going to warm it without letting it boil. If you let it boil, then suddenly the water vapor is going to start cooking off, and you're going to be changing that balance between perfect 1 part to 1 part to something that's a little bit different. So once that simple syrup is warmed up and all of the sugar has dissolved, we're just going to bottle that and get that in the fridge straight away. And pour it just carefully into your bottle. Yeah. He's got skills. So we have our first component of our sour, a nice 1-to-1 simple syrup. Next up, we've got to get onto our fresh juice. So fresh juice is exactly that. We don't use anything store-bought, and if we're going to prep our juice in advance, we're only going to leave it for 24 hours in the fridge. So fresh lemons, you want to just lop off the top and bottom, and then pop it in half. And by taking the top and bottom off, you're just going to make it a lot easier to fit into that citrus squeezer. Get your juicer, pop half in, face side down, so they're facing the holes. And then just get your measuring jigger, and you're squeezing out your fresh citrus juice. Look at that. So 1/2 is yielding about 15 milliliters, or half an ounce. But every lemon is different, and you can get some beautiful, big, juicy lemons over in California and South America. Okay, so we have our fresh citrus juice and our sugar syrup made perfectly to spec, and now it's simply a case of pulling it all together. Now, I mentioned earlier that the perfect sour has got the perfect ratio, and if you nail the ratio, then you can make all sorts of cocktails. And that ratio is this beautiful thing of 2 parts to 1 part to 1 part. So 2 parts of your strong, 2 parts of your spirit, 2 parts of Renais Gin, to 1 part of sweet, your sugar syrup, and 1 part of sour, your citrus. So let's pull that all together. I've already got my sour in here, so 25 milliliters, or you guys over there in the US, we can say 1 ounce, even though it's just under. Then we're going to add our sugar syrup. We're going to do 25 milliliters, or another ounce of 1-to-1 simple syrup. Preferably chilled simple syrup, as it's going to preserve the integrity of your ice. And 2 parts, 50 mils, or 2 ounces, however you like it, of your Renais Gin. That's it. In that mixing glass there, you have got everything you need to make a delicious sour. But with a gin sour, you need that lovely frothy texture, that foaminess. So we're going to use some chickpea brine. Now, you can use this in place of egg whites. The same ratio exists. So all you want to do is add enough to give it some texture without it being too overwhelming or overpowering in flavor. So in this case, we're going to add 20 milliliters, or just over half an ounce, into your cocktail shaker. And here we go. Just got to add ice, preferably some nice big chunks. It's going to take a lot to really get that going. It's going to dilute slower, you can be more controlled. We're going to cap it, making sure we've got a nice straight line down the side of the shaker. Give it a gentle tap and pop it this way up, so the opening is going to be going over your shoulder. And normally at this point, before everything starts diluting, you'll have your glassware ready and you'll have your glassware cold. I've got mine in the freezer behind me. It's always good to have frosty cold glassware. So here we go. Smooth. Fantastic. So everything's ready to go. It's settling down. Before it gets too placid, we're going to pop a Hawthorne strainer on top, get our fine strainer ready, and our cocktail glass out of the freezer. This beauty, little vintage guy. You simply strain off any ice shards. Straight into there. And we're going to finish that with a little coin of lemon peel, just for aroma. So if you grab your lemon peel in between your finger and your thumb, you squeeze it over the surface, it's just going to create a nice citrusy zest on top. Last but not least, with any great drink, have a little wipe of any spillages and serve it with a big fat smile. Cheers.